And we are live. Hello, everyone. This is My Two Cents. Welcome to the weekly stream to discuss, what the heck happened in the U.S. election 2020. I apologize. We're getting started a little late, having some technical difficulties here backstage, but hopefully we won't have too many of those going forward. Anyways, we streamed last week, and as I said, really, Donald Trump is less socialist than Joe Biden. That's really all you can say. He was by no means a hero of the Republic, but I did hopefully want to see him win, just for no other reason than to watch all the liberals cry and go crazy. Looks like that's not going to be the case now, as President-elect Kamala Harris has been declared by the mainstream media. Yes, President-elect Kamala Harris, because let's face it, assuming Biden does take the White House, he's probably going to get 25th Amendment out of there within a month for having dementia, making Kamala Harris our next president.
More than likely, which is kind of sad.
But I think it is worth, there are a lot of things that are worth talking about with this election, especially all the irregularities that have been noted and the court cases that are going to follow. To sum up what I want to talk about in this stream, if nothing else, election 2020 should be proof positive to you that your vote does not matter, nor did it ever matter. The state will always get what it wants.
Exactly.
So first, unless you've been living under a rock, I'm guessing you're already familiar with most of these things, but let's go over exactly what happened on election day. Obviously, November 3rd was the official election day. They started counting votes upon closing the polls, and about, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at night on November 3rd, it looked pretty solid that Donald Trump was going to win re-election. He was leading in Florida, Georgia, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, just about every major state that was said to be a swing state in this election. Donald Trump had a sizable lead, not a landslide lead, but it seemed pretty unthinkable that Joe Biden could have overcome the lead Trump had in all the states. So the first article I'm going to take a look at here is from the Federalist, which notes some voting irregularities. Give me a second to share my screen.
Oh, and I wanted to ask, My Two Cents, have you talked to Nate lately?
I have not. Initially, he said he was going to be on the stream, or well, I guess he didn't say he'd be here. He said he'd try, but I have not talked to him recently. No.
Okay, because he shared some links with me about votes in Michigan. Apparently, the numbers of registered voters do not match the votes of the Michigan vote, and so there's some big inconsistencies there. There's some big irregularities there, and it really does seem like there was a lot of voter fraud going on in this election. So, I mean, that's just something to look out for right there.
Absolutely. Well, at this point, I don't think there's anyone, Republican or Democrat, and yes, the Democrats will lie, but I think everyone knows voter fraud has taken place in this election on a very wide scale. The only question people are arguing over is it enough to actually sway the results of the election?
Right.
Now I can't say definitively. Obviously, I'm not a journalist. I've not taken the time to travel to all these states and do a deep investigation. I'll leave that to other people. I'll just say that if you don't believe there was any voter fraud in this election, I certainly can't help you. Exactly. But it goes to show, and I've looked at a lot of political talking heads discussing how in a republic we need to be where we all vote. We need to be willing to accept the results of an election, no matter what the results. That's what it means to have free and fair elections. And in principle, I agree that if you believe elections are a just kind of thing, then of course you would have to be willing to accept the results, even if it doesn't go your way. But if the past 4 years have taught us nothing, it's that neither party really believes that. All that matters is getting in. And
exactly.
And it really doesn't matter what you have to do, even if you cheat, so long as you get your way. So obviously, I think there are some politicians that have spoken out rather aggressively about having free and fair elections. Good on them for at least making the appearance. But let's face it, all either side wants is to win, and they're both willing to cheat, even if they have to. I think Democrats are more open about it, but that's really the way it works.
Exactly.
So anyways, taking a look at this article that was published by John Daniel Davidson. Yes, Democrats are trying to seal the election in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. He writes about how he says, as of this writing, it appears the Democratic Party machines in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are trying to steal the election. As reporters and commentators went to bed early Tuesday morning, all three states were too close to call. But President Trump, I think he meant Wednesday morning. But President Trump led former Vice President Biden by comfortable margins, far beyond what had been predicted in the polls. None of the networks called these states because enough mail-in ballots remained uncounted that it could swing either way, but Trump's position looked good. Then something strange happened in the dead of night. In both Michigan and Wisconsin, vote dumps early Wednesday morning showed 100% of the votes going for Biden and 0%. That's right, 0. So not even one vote for Trump. In Michigan, Biden somehow got 138,339 votes and Trump got none, 0, in an overnight vote dump. When my Federalist colleague Sean Davis noted this, Twitter was quick to censor his tweet, even though all he had done was compare two sets of vote totals on the New York Times website. And he wasn't the only one who noticed. Although on Wednesday, it appeared to anyone who noted the Biden vote dump in Michigan was getting censored by Twitter. Now, incidentally, I looked at President Trump's Twitter today, and I think every tweet he's tweeted for the past 48 hours has been flagged as misinformation by Twitter. Mm-hmm. So do with that what you will.
Yeah. I think DarkCon is here, so just putting that out there.
Okay.
And yeah, this whole thing reeks of voter fraud. This whole situation reeks of voter and ballot fraud.
DarkCon, welcome.
Hey, DarkCon.
I'll quick going through this and then we'll discuss. Okay, others were quick to note that the partisan censorship from Twitter, yada, yada, yada. All right. It turns out the vote dump was the result of an alleged typo, an extra 0 that had been backtacked onto Biden's vote totals in Shiawassee County, Michigan. Okay, that's not what I'm looking for. There's one more. Okay, here we go. And then Wisconsin. Then another mysterious all-Biden vote dump happened in Wisconsin. Biden miraculously overcame a 4.1-point Trump lead in the middle of the night thanks to vote dumps in which he got, you guessed it, 100% of the votes and Trump got 0. Note the vertical lines in both graphs below. And I know there's a meme that's been going around in which they've made this an F that spells fraud. But basically what everyone can see is suspicious is you're watching, this is the vote count totals that were coming in relation to time. As we get into the morning of November 4th, we see that counting stops. The lines get vertical. So no new votes are being counted. And then the moment they start getting counted again, 100% of the votes go for Biden, pushing him into the lead. And the same is true in Wisconsin. Now,
vertical.
Obviously...
Did you mean horizontal?
Well, they were horizontal, and then the Biden... and then the Biden count is vertical. So they're horizontal early in the morning. In other words, no new votes are being counted. Then as soon as the votes start getting counted again, 100% of the votes go for Biden, more than 138,000 in Michigan. And they said, did they give the exact number here for Michigan? They didn't give an exact number for Michigan, but basically 100% of the votes go to Biden in an instant, overcoming a 4.1-point lead. And then, of course, for the next several days, they refuse to call the states. Because they're still gathering all these mail-in ballots. But the bottom line is now, after this weekend, they have called the election in favor of Biden. And in every single swing state where Trump had a lead, Biden has now overtaken that lead as the result of mail-in ballots. So now, incidentally, do these irregularities prove necessarily that voter fraud took place? Well, it doesn't prove it took place any more than anything else. Well, there's certainly other evidence that hardcore evidence of voter fraud that we'll go over lately. But I'd just say this: if a single candidate receiving 100% of the votes at any given point isn't suspicious at all, I don't know what I can say. If nothing else, you gotta say that looks suspicious. I mean, imagine if in 2016 Hillary Clinton had a sizable lead against Donald Trump in any of those states, Wisconsin, Michigan, all of which she was heavily favored to win, and then after several hours, suddenly there was a boost where Trump received 100% of the votes. She received exactly 0. What do you? It would have been, if nothing else, that would have been much better evidence of Russian meddling in the election than anything they ever presented.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like mostly a whole bunch of correlation stuff so far, which correlation isn't always a causation necessarily. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs to be looked into more. And I just want to put it out there. This Tuesday, I plan on reading and pre-reading some articles in between tomorrow and Tuesday ultimately. when I go streaming on Tuesday for a news stream talking about some of the post-election news and more specifically about the whole voter fraud allegation stuff. So just some self-shilling right there. Yay.
Is there any chance, if they do prove that this was a massive voter fraud situation, is there any chance that they might hold the election again or hold a second election with no mail-in ballots or anything like that?
Now, from what I've seen, that's a difficult question to answer because we're, as far as American history goes, we're kind of in unprecedented territory.
Yeah,
you can talk about the 2000 election, Bush versus Gore, in which Florida was specifically the election that was contested, and Gore demanded recounts. Although in that case, they never actually ordered another election. There were just several recounts. But despite the fact that it moved several hundred votes either way, Bush had a high enough lead that it wasn't. Basically, what ended up being declared there was, okay, are there some questions about votes in Florida? Yes, but we've recounted several times, and every time Bush has come out by a margin of greater, I think it was 20,000 votes or something. So despite Gore's objections, you can't. The fact is, even if there was voter fraud, Bush still won. And that's the question that really needs, that these investigations are supposed to turn out. If they investigate and they say, yes, there was voter fraud, but the reality is Biden still had so much of a lead that even if there was voter fraud, he still won, then my guess is the courts will rule that Donald Trump lost. If it's enough that it could actually change the results of the election, then we're going to be, it's anyone's guess what the courts will ultimately decide. But I thought an interesting tweet I saw today was from Styx Hexenhammer, and he said basically there are only two ways this election ends. One candidate concedes or the Supreme Court declares who the president is. And I think given the amount of states that are currently contested, all the lawsuits that have been filed by Trump's legal team, I would suspect, again, who knows what will ultimately happen, but I feel like that is probably what's going to happen. Trump will not concede going all the way to January, and it's going to take, and the Supreme Court, all these various investigations will take place, and ultimately the Supreme Court will decide who really won the election.
Honestly, I'm almost willing to agree with Solo Knight on this one. This election could either cause a collapse or it could cause a breakup in our country. In all honesty, going at how, just how people are polarized about this whole issue and how polarized people have been over this last election, if not a collapse, it could definitely cause a breakup between red and blue states. So,
well, no matter what half the country is going to believe.
That's kind of the wet dream of Boogaloo people and Tim Pool, for example, civil war within the U.S.
Yeah, but no, what were you saying, my 2 cents?
I was saying no matter what the outcome ultimately is, because half the country, all the Trump supporters right now believe the election was stolen from Trump. All the Democratic voters believe, Trump is crying and screaming because Biden really won the election. But if, voter fraud is uncovered and the courts rule in favor of Trump, the immediate opposite will happen. All the Democratic voters will claim, Trump has secretly undermined the system, using illegally using intelligence services. He's created false evidence of voter fraud and then turn the election in his favor. So it really doesn't matter who the Supreme Court ultimately decides is the president. The other half of the electors will believe that it was illegitimate.
More than likely. No, I agree.
Mm-hmm. So yes, the stage for civil unrest has been set, and it is, it's anyone's guess exactly how it's going to go down. Now, again, as I said at the beginning, I believe the lesson everyone needs to take away is that elections. The reality is elections have never been legitimate. Voter fraud takes place every year. The real question is how to what degree does it take place, and does your vote really have a chance to influence the United States, which we will talk about before the end of the stream. Right. But before I get to that, so we talked just about the irregularities there. Now I do want to point out several instances in which actual voter fraud has already been proven. So let's go ahead and share this next article here.
Okay.
Yeah, the next question is it enough to have had a considerable sway in helping Biden win? Because if it isn't like enough of a big margin to say, oh, this state actually belongs to Trump as far as who won this state, well, then it doesn't really matter much of a hill of beans.
Yes, and that's the question. So right now, there are at least several instances we know voter fraud took place. There are definitely some suspicious areas where voter fraud could have taken place. But the ultimate legal question is not going to be, did voter fraud occur? It's going to be, was there enough to actually sway the results of the election?
Yep.
Because for those that remember, back in 2016, Jill Stein, the candidate for the Green Party, did actually file a lawsuit in Pennsylvania trying to argue voter fraud there. Her case was ultimately dismissed as she did not meet the qualifications to be an aggrieved candidate under Pennsylvania law. And as they pointed out, even if her claims were true, they said, okay, even if this was voter fraud, it still wouldn't be enough to overcome Trump's lead. Trump won. End of story. So that's really the question of what's going to happen. But here we have this article by Jordan Davidson, November 6th. Software glitch in Michigan County tallied 6,000 Republican votes as Democrat. A glitch in software used to tabulate ballots in Antrim County, Michigan, caused at least 6,000 Republican votes to be counted as Democrat, according to Michigan GOP chairwoman Laura Cox. The miscalculation, Cox said in a press conference, was first reported by a county clerk. A short investigation revealed that 47 counties in Michigan may have also suffered from a similar glitch with the same software, which could have caused some red counties to rake in a higher number of Democrat votes than usual. Antrim County had to hand count all of the ballots in these counties that use the software and need to closely examine their results for similar discrepancies, Cox said. The people of Michigan deserve a transparent and open process. So in at least one county, they proved that the vote tabulators took at least 6,000 Republican votes and registered them as Democratic votes. And there were at least 47 counties in Michigan that use the same software. Does that mean that the glitch occurred in every county? Not necessarily. Does it mean it wasn't just a technical glitch and not some nefarious actor that actually programmed it to happen that way? I know there are plenty of people on Twitter claiming that this same software is being used in other states, which I haven't investigated, so I can't say for sure, but it doesn't seem unlikely. But it just goes to show that there's at least one proven instance where actual, whether you call it fraud or failure is up to you, but voter fraud, in other words, ballots that were for one party actually getting changed to another, definitively took place.
If it's not technically voter fraud, it's at least election fraud anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now a glitch in software that's supposed to be that secure, you'll have to try and sell me more on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And a few years ago, wasn't there a whole lot of leftists that was saying supposedly there is no evidence of voter fraud that happens in the U.S., or at least not a considerable amount, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
This year might be showing to be the bulwark year of when it's a go against that narrative,
Well, what is absolutely hilarious in all of this is for the past 4 years, we have heard nothing but Donald Trump is an illegitimate president. The only reason he got elected is because of Russian meddling in the election, which again, I actually made when I was very early on YouTube. The last election was when I was just getting my YouTube channel started. I made a video called "Why is Russian Meddling a Big Deal?" where I basically pointed out, suppose it's true that the Russians meddled in the election and they spread spread propaganda online trying to get the American people to vote for Donald Trump. Suppose further that Vladimir Putin himself had made a video, put it on YouTube or some other platform. Hey, American people, I think Donald Trump is the best choice for you. You should vote for Donald Trump. And imagine that millions of Americans saw Vladimir Putin's video and said, you know what? Vladimir Putin is right. I should vote for Donald Trump. So they went to the polls and voted for Donald Trump. Would that make Trump an illegitimate president? Would it mean that because the voters were influenced by the Russian leader, their votes somehow don't count just because they were influenced? And hello, Scorch. But to finish my thought, no, absolutely. They still would have voted for Trump, even whatever their reasons, they still voted for Trump. Now, in this case, we've got, at least with the software glitch, we have a case where no, at least 6,000 people voted for Donald Trump, and the software actually changed their votes to register for Biden. Now, that is, if anything, that is election meddling. You can say it's an honest mistake, and it wasn't supposed to happen, but either way, that would be real meddling in the election. People voting because someone from Russia encouraged them to do so does not somehow make their vote illegitimate.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Simpsons predicted it. Simpsons actually predicted this. Does anyone remember the Simpsons Treehouse of Horrors that came on in 2008? When it was like the intro of it was Homer Simpson goes into a voting booth and he tries to vote for Obama, but it keeps saying one vote for John McCain. No, and then keeps trying to vote for Biden. Or, I mean, he tries to keep voting for Obama, and he keeps saying, one more vote for McCain, one more vote for McCain. Oh, my God. This is actually happening. It's like this is actually happening, but it's on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Actually, I actually do remember that now that you mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, and even weirder, it's for Biden. It's actually for his vice president. Oh, my God. The Simpsons predicted it.
You know, and it's funny because everyone has been talking about how The Simpsons predicted coronavirus and murder hornet. Mm-hmm. It's like the writers of The Simpsons are psychic.
Yeah, I know.
There's no other explanation.
They also predicted President Trump. Go figure.
Mm-hmm. The murder hornets kind of ended up more or less as a fluke anyways. I mean, they weren't like mass spread, and they weren't technically killers. It was some video that I saw of somebody actually taking a murder hornet with a small pair of tweezers and having it sting his arm, and he had like a big swell where it stung, but it did not kill him ultimately. But you know, it's not here nor there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But this does bring me to the ultimate point of this discussion I wanted to bring out, and that is that for 4 years, the left screamed about how Donald Trump was a illegitimate president. He was only elected because of Russian misinformation. Therefore, we need to impeach him. He didn't really get elected. This was election fraud. Now, in the 2020 election, after days of tabulating ballots, Biden has come out as the presumptive winner, and the Democrats want to scream, we have the most secure elections in the country. There was absolutely no voter fraud, and if you think otherwise, you're just a conspiracy theorist, and Twitter is going to censor you. It goes to show, does anyone at this point believe either side really, really cared about free and fair elections?
No.
Probably not. There are instances, particularly like there was a Real Clear Politics article that I had read a few episodes of Strike Force ago, where they mentioned one anecdote of a Republican politician or somebody trying to run for office in the Republican Party. I think it was either Wisconsin or one of the Carolinas where that they were committing election fraud to win. And then there was some case to overturn that election and give it to the Democrats because he, got caught red-handed ultimately.
Mm-hmm. But basically, and both sides, I find it interesting. Both the diehard Trump supporters and the Biden supporters have framed the election, and we talked about this on last week's stream and other streams before, how this is the most important election ever. If our side does not win, the country will be fundamentally destroyed. We must do whatever it takes to stop Donald Trump's reelection, to stop Joe Biden from getting elected. Otherwise, the country will be fundamentally destroyed. Now, it's not hard to see that if that is really what you believe, wouldn't cheating be justified? I mean, if you really believe you're saving the world, saving millions of lives from destruction, wouldn't you be justified in cheating in order to win? I mean, it seems to follow.
No, I'd say no. I mean, it's more of somebody's own subjective pessimisms. And you know what? I believe that it was Nate who brought up this point, that literally every single election cycle, that good old phrase is said. This is the election to end all, or this is the most crucial election of all time. If we do not win this election, literally the country is done for. And yet we still continue on to the next presidential cycle and the next and then the next,
Oh, and I certainly agree. My point is not whether it's true, though. My point is if you genuinely believe that, then it seems it's not that much of a stretch to believe that you'd also believe rigging an election is justified.
It just makes me think of the meme with Kermit the Frog looking out the window, all sad, like saying, "Now I have to wait for another 4 years for the most important election of my lifetime."
I remember being super pessimistic about 2012 and the possibility of Obama getting reelected as president, thinking that was going to literally be the end of the world. And even 2008 as well. And man, do I feel like a fool for thinking that back then. And by the way, for people who are saying that I look like Chris Reagan, thanks, I guess.
Honestly, that does sound like a rationalization that the libs would make, that, we have to cheat or else, America's going to be doomed. The world's going to end. We're all going to die. That does sound like a rationalization they would make. So just to be fair, that does sound kind of legit.
Mm-hmm. Well, but then it goes to show. So everyone is told, especially if you think back to the presidential debate, Joe Biden telling every American, go out and vote. Vote your conscience. It is so important that you vote. Well, is it though? Because, hang on a second.
Hey.
Hello, Solomon.
Hey, Solomon.
Hey, what's up?
Hello, I don't think we've ever met before.
Well, I will just give a shout out. He only became a patron right before this stream out of his desire to take part in the stream.
Oh,
So
sweet.
a reminder that all those that support my channel are welcome to take part in these streams. He asked, can I pledge right before this stream to get in? And the answer was yes. So thank you for your support. Glad to have you on our team.
Yeah, I tried to get in earlier. I just had to get off work first.
All right, no problem.
By the way, I do want to say that my biggest concern about this election ultimately is the fact of whether or not there was fraud that happened, because if there really is fraud, then it really sets a bad precedent for the next election cycle and then the next and the next, and just going on down the line. But ultimately, if ultimately Biden does win, do I feel that bad about it or that pessimistic about it? Not really, especially, well, except for maybe on the front of foreign policy, because some of the Trumpists have some ideas or rhetoric to espouse about how Trump was, they think anyways, that of how he was good on foreign policy, although I would call into question some of those things, but that's neither here nor there. What my biggest concern was the Senate ultimately, and it does seem that Republicans are at least keeping the Senate. And I know that Republicans are not ideal when it comes to gun rights, really, but Trump is even worse when it comes to gun rights. I don't trust Trump at all. He said that he was willing to tolerate or at least compromise on the assault weapons ban, and 2023 is coming around the corner. That would happen within Trump's second term if he was to ultimately win a second term. That's when the next time that the assault weapons ban is supposed to come up in legislative battles and whatnot, whether or not it should be renewed. And if the Democrats got control of both the House and the Senate, whether or not Trump won the presidency wouldn't have meant jack squat ultimately, because I think that he would have just ultimately buckled under pressure from the Democrats in both the Senate and the House and gone ahead and signed with it as well. And AR-15s and all that other stuff that applies under the assault weapons ban would have got banned or extra regulated, so forth. But at least we got the Republican Senate to kind of hold whoever wins the presidential seat, hold their feet to the fire on that front somewhat.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah,
I don't have too much faith in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This kind of seems like a repeat of the fall of the Roman Republic, if anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think to kind of expound on the point I'm trying to make, people are constantly taught, rightly or wrongly, and I would say wrongly, that you can affect what the government does. By going out and voting, you can control who goes into office and what policies are passed. If you don't like the policies that are being passed by the current politicians, you can vote them out and change the direction of the country by voting. I mean, the American people have been sold the lie that by actually getting out and voting, they can control what direction the government goes. Well, as I've argued in my article, why government elections are a farce, historically, you can see that that's not the case. No matter whether a Republican or a Democrat holds the White House, no matter whether Republicans or Democrats control Congress, no matter, I guess the Supreme Court up to this point had a little more sway, but you can see how the Democratic Party in particular is fighting so hard to utilize the Supreme Court to create legislation. The country has been shifting more and more towards a larger totalitarian government. Every year, the government spends more money, expands the scope of its authority, and it does this faster or slower depending on who controls the White House or Congress, but it still happens nonetheless. The politics are only going in one direction. Now, up to this point, in a lot of elections, for example, like 2012, Romney, Obama, you can prove that large banks like Goldman Sachs funded both the campaign of Obama and of Romney. So in that case, where you've got two controlled candidates, it really doesn't matter there's no need for election fraud. Whoever wins, the people who are pulling the strings of government get their way. Now, Trump is a bit of an anomaly in that, well, I by no means think he's independent of the political process. He's was less under the thumb than many of the career politicians who already existed, and thus there was a great push to get him out of office, but using voter fraud if necessary. But it basically goes to show that even if the people want something different, whether it's through controlling the candidates, whether it's through voter fraud, the state is always going to get its way, which is why you should not believe the lie that you can actually control where the government goes by voting. You can vote all you want. The government is going to get its way, and the powerful people who really control government, not the figureheads they put in place.
Don't waste your time selecting a new slave master.
Right.
Good one, Scorch.
Yeah, Lysander Spooner. A man is made no less a slave just because he can choose his master through a course of years. That's wise words.
Now, it's funny you should bring Lysander Spooner up, given the American Mail Company proved what a horror show the U.S. Postal Service is, and the U.S. Postal Service is at the center of election fraud this time around.
I do want to say that I'm probably like the token person on this stream that actually voted at all, which the whole ethics of voting and whether or not voting actually does anything, that might be a debate or discussion for another time, but still.
Darkon, nah, you and I are both the one token. I kind of had to in order just to get out the house, to get people to just leave me alone. Believe it or not, it's really funny just watching them say, like, they asked me who I voted for, and I just said, like, Trump, and then I'm like, I did nothing else. I just want to piss you off.
Actually, no, keep going.
I was saying they told me to vote, so I voted just to piss them off.
Nice. And what I wanted to say is that no, I did not vote. Another thing is, this kind of reminds me of something I saw online. It was this one where this guy was talking to his girlfriend, and this guy was like, I didn't vote. And she was like, me neither. I don't believe in forcing people into forcing people with a ballot. And they both like jump into bed together. It just reminded me of me and my girlfriend, because I was like, I didn't vote. And I called her up and she was like, me neither. And it was just like, oh my God, I love you even more.
All right. Well, you can save that one for Penthouse Forum Night Shift.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of girls, though, how do you like that video I shared in my NSFW channel on my server, Night Shift?
Oh my God.
All right, before this stream gets censored, we're going to shift the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, on the subject of Lysander Spooner, so one of the central points of discussion in this election is the premise of mail-in ballots. Now, mail-in ballots have always been one of the ripest areas to commit voter fraud, because when people have to actually go to the polls, submit their vote, and then the votes start getting counted immediately thereafter, it leaves a very narrow time frame for people to commit voter fraud. But when and yes, Pipsqueak, you are welcome to join. As Pipsqueak is a patron, he is entitled to join this stream. So I'll keep an eye out for it. If I'm running my mouth when you get in, just give me a minute and I'll get you in here. But when people have to vote in person and the votes are counted immediately thereafter, it leaves much less time to commit voter fraud. However, when people are allowed to mail in ballots and those ballots are stored at facilities for a long period of time before they are ultimately transported to the polls and counted, it is much easier to create lots of fake ballots and include them in the regular count. And further,
Sorry,
ahead,
and this is also according to Real Clear Politics as well. And Real Clear Politics is not even really a left or right organization. They're more like down the center, nonpartisan organization. That even they admit that it's easier that cases of fraud are more likely with mail-in ballots as opposed to in-person ballots. So yeah.
Pipsqueak, welcome.
Hey, Pipsqueak.
Hello.
But what is interesting is that when the polls closed on Tuesday night and going into Wednesday morning when Donald Trump had a lead, supposedly that is the point where they paused and then they started counting mail-in ballots, and that's when we saw suddenly the support for Biden shoot into the stratosphere. Now that in itself isn't necessarily suspicious. It's already well known that Democrats are more likely to vote by mail-in ballot than Republicans are. But again, is that in itself just a fact that tells you that seems to be true about Democrats and Republicans, or is it that mail-in ballots have always been very ripe area to commit voter fraud. And but in most elections, absentee ballot, mail-in ballot voting comprises maybe 1% of the overall vote, and for that reason, it's generally not enough to sway the election. Whereas when it's a significant with COVID and the expansion of mail-in ballots, there is much more capability for conducting voter fraud through mail-in ballots than there ever was before.
Yeah, and if it really is makes up only like 1% of the the tally, the total of votes participated within an election, then that should not have been enough to sway Pennsylvania all the way over to Biden. Because let's remember, like when Pennsylvania was like clocking in at like 85% votes counted, Trump had Biden by about 7 points, if I remember correctly, in that state, and yet coming to the later parts of counting the votes, suddenly Biden leads Trump by 1 percentage point. So, yeah, it doesn't exactly line up.
And that was 1% mail-in absentee ballots in previous elections. In this election, I don't know the exact percentage, but it was significantly higher this time around because most states radically expanded the amount of mail-in ballots that they allowed, because it was considered a safety issue for COVID. The thing with mail-in ballots is it is extremely difficult, and multiple writers from both political sides of the aisle have noted this, as Dark Khan already pointed out. But with a mail-in ballot, verifying the veracity of the ballot, who filled it out, where it was sent from, that kind of thing is next to impossible. And it opens the question then, if political actors filled out tons of ballots preemptively, stored them, and so that they could be inserted into the process if necessary in order to sway the election, how are you going to detect those votes? It's extremely difficult to do.
I would say the most popular person should be elected, which is nobody, since the majority didn't even vote.
Exactly.
And that's true. The majority don't vote either way.
Fine by me.
Face reveal.
Empty chair 2020.
Giant meteor 2020.
Yeah. Honestly, that's another reason I've got to reference the Probability Brooch. It was that libertarian novel. It took place. Basically, they at one point the main characters went to the capital of this libertarian North America nation that existed, and they went in, and it was like they were looking at the list of presidents on the walls of this country, and then there were ones that were blank, and it was no president for this amount of years and whatnot. And one of the characters was no one's gonna die if there isn't a president. So that's what it just kind of reminds me of.
Now, I see there were a number of people. The question was asked, who is Lysander Spooner? Lysander Spooner was I would say the first. I don't know if he's definitively the first, but he definitely proved that the U.S. Postal Service was garbage and that private corporations can operate far better than the U.S. Postal Service. He started a private company called the American Letter Company. Its performance to the U.S. Postal Service was so superior that he threatened to put the Postal Service out of business, and thus the Postal Service complained to the government, who then passed regulations to shut down the American Letter Company.
Typical monopoly.
I want to say Mag is here.
Hello. Just want to say hi.
Hi.
Hey, Mag.
Howdy, Mag.
What's up?
Not
much.
Yeah.
Just talking about boring politics.
Yep.
Oh, same as usual, I guess.
Boring, soul-draining politics.
Well, that's why this guy's here. He has nothing better to do.
JC Armitage in the chat asks, speaking of voter turnout, does anyone here actually believe that Dementia Donkey Man got more votes than Obama in 08? I mean, the population has grown in 8 years' time or 12 years' time, if you want to go all the way back to 2008. But so
I doubt it.
What?
I was saying I doubt it because, I remember the Obama election. Mostly just the fact that I'm black and that was huge in my family. So, yeah, that's the one time I actually saw everybody vote. That's just my own personal experience, but I just don't believe that Biden got a higher percentage than back in the 08 election.
Oh, we're talking about percentages?
Not
'Cause
even
I don't-
percentages, just people coming out to vote.
Okay, because I do not know what the percentages are of the population now compared to back then, as far as who got more turnout, Biden or Obama. I just know that the raw numbers strike higher for Biden than they do for Obama. But of course, that might be kind of a little bit an ignorant line of thinking for me, just looking at the raw numbers instead of the percentages of people voting in general.
But again, it's ironic that you say come out to vote, because very clearly more people came out to vote for Trump. It's only because of the mail-in ballots that Biden ended up winning.
Right.
We didn't see that one coming.
They stayed in to vote.
And again, that raises the question, did they really vote for Biden? Where did those mail-in ballots come from? Given the nature of mail-in ballots, it's next to impossible to tell.
Okay. At first I thought you were telling a dad joke there, but now I get you. Did their votes actually get switched around by the U.S. Postal Service or something or other?
Mm-hmm. Or did the people who sent those letters in actually cast the ballots?
Right. Did they just leave the presidential mark blank? Did they vote for everything else and just decide not to vote in the presidential election? And somebody on down the line said, "Oh, we're gonna mark Biden with your ballot or whatever."
Mm-hmm. Litigist Society says here, voter turnout in 2008 was about 15 million up from 2004 because about 10 million came out of the woodwork to vote for Obama and 5 million extra came out to vote against him. All right. And you know what was one thing I do remember that was about the 2004 election when Obama won? There was a significant amount of the black population that came out to vote for Obama, specifically because they said it was time for a black president.
Mm-hmm. You know, now that I recall it, there was actually a lower turnout in 2012 as compared to 2008. Let me look this up more specifically.
Excuse me, I meant 2008, not 2004. 2004 was Bush versus Kerry.
Oh, right. Yeah, I realize that you guys are talking about 2004 versus 08, but I'm just wanting to fact check myself on voter turnout being weaker in 12 than in 08.
Now, before I guess we're moving to the latter half of the stream, so we can go ahead and move on. If anybody has any questions or any other issues you want to talk about, by all means, put them in the chat. Anybody on the stream has anything they want to talk about, we can shift discussion now. But I will say, here is my prediction for the coming days. There will be increased civil unrest, protests, and things being destroyed in the United States, mostly in major cities. The mainstream media will continue to project that Joe Biden is the winner. The litigation will play out all the way till January, which will force the Supreme Court to decide who the next president is. Again, I don't know. If I had to guess, I think the courts will probably rule in favor of Biden. So Biden will be sworn in. Within 1 month, the 25th Amendment will be evoked as he has dementia, and Harris will be elevated to become the first female president.
Oh, and that's just going to end so wonderfully.
I didn't say it was my preferred outcome. I'm just saying that's what I predict is going to happen.
I know.
Yeah. Why does Harris seem like Cleopatra in this situation? I don't know. A woman who's cucking the old timer who's getting into office now. It seems like a whole Mark Anthony Cleopatra situation.
Oh, it absolutely. That is an excellent parallel to draw. I just say when I picture what Cleopatra looked like, I'm sure she was much hotter than Harris.
I don't know. She was kind of inbred.
Fair point.
Yeah, I am actually looking at Wikipedia here, and it seems that by about at least 3.5 million votes, brought less in 2012 than in 2008 by 3.5 million. Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt there.
No problem. I was saying all the legends say Cleopatra was this, profound seductress and temptress. I find it hard to compare that. I can't. Although Harris definitely slept with people to get where she is,
like Cleopatra.
I just don't think she can compete with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's be honest. Cleopatra did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm willing to agree with you, my 2 cents. Kamala Harris probably isn't, probably wasn't as hot as Cleopatra. Now, Tulsi Gabbard, on the other hand, Tulsi, I would
that
Just
Same
saying.
here.
And
Milfy,
that is absolutely fair, Night Shift.
Milfy 2024. Let's do it.
Don't you mean PILF 2024?
Let's go.
Help, I'm addicted to Spooner now. The man is crazy far ahead of his time. He was indeed.
Amen.
Great businessman, great philosopher. Zachary Colley says, Pipsqueak, does Australia still require by law that people vote? You'll have to answer that one, Pipsqueak.
It requires by law that you show up to the polling place and have your name ticked off. You do not have to cast a valid vote. You can, because basically what happens when an election is on, you show up to the polling place, you go up to the guy, you present your ID plus your address to verify your identity. They hand you your voting papers, and then that is technically what is required to fulfill your legal obligation. You can take those papers and put them in the bin. You can rip them in half and stuff them in the ballot box. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as at the end of the day, those papers go in a ballot box, whether or not you've actually marked them and you have your name marked off on the registry. That's done. You're basically done. And I will say that I had a bit of conversation about this of, like, with a couple of people that said, oh, we should add in Australian style mandatory voting to the United States. First off, no, because mandatory, etc. But second off, I think there is at least a small amount of merit in that suggestion, in that if you don't actually show up to vote, you should be crossed off the voting register and have to re-register, because that would prevent all of these dead people voting. It would prevent a lot of voting frauds, and actually having a register that you tick off, you can now basically what that allows you to do, and this is why we have mandatory. This is one of the reasons why the law is what it is in Australia, is that if there isn't any allegations of voting fraud, the Electoral Commission can basically get together all of the registry books with all of the names crossed off, and if they find a significant number of people who have been crossed off more than once, they can absolutely say that, yes, someone's been illegally voting.
So if we're getting kind of in the area of where we just talk about random whatever subjects, or if I may make a little bit of an announcement right here, I'm finally getting started on making my next response video to Tim Horn, actually.
Oh, nice.
Okay,
Cool.
awesome.
In case anybody was curious. I did do a couple of live streams with a friend of the channel, The Conundrum, of where that we had responded live to his video little under a month after he had released his response video to me, Tim Horn, I mean. But now I'm actually getting down to making an edited response video, something that'll be hopefully around less than an hour time clocking in. I wonder how many of the voots were self-defense voots, aka they were casted not for the candidate but against the opponent.
It's interesting JC Armitage brings that up. I would say the vast majority of them probably were. Most people, certainly, like I said, I'm willing to say that Trump is less socialist than Biden, but that's really all you can say. I don't like Donald Trump by any stretch of the imagination. But that doesn't really mean that the country's any better off with him being president. Well, that it's really going to help in the long run anyways, which, hang on, I'm looking up a quote from the 48 Laws of Power here that I used in my article.
And Litigious Society asks, in the event that you were purged from YouTube, where would you stream instead? 2 cents.
Good question. I know BitChute is working on getting streaming software. I'd probably have to start utilizing Streamlabs and then posting them to BitChute, BitTube, and Library.
Would you consider Twitch?
Hey, what about DLive? I know TFM does it there.
I guess I would. I haven't thought a lot about Twitch. I've always seen Twitch as mostly a game streaming site, but I know a lot of people are using it to stream all kinds of stuff now.
You got to remember that Destiny and Vosh stream on there too. So
Yes.
And not to mention Chud Logic, which, by the way, I did send you like a link to the debate that I had against the guy. Go check that out if you're interested. 2 cents. Chud Logic streams often there on Twitch as well.
I wanted to say, Darkon, you asked me if I gave my feedback on the Chud Logic live stream. I kind of did. The only feedback I would say is the only critique I would say on your end is, when you were in Chud Logic, we're talking about welfare, and Chud Logic was having to go at you on welfare. What I'm gonna say is kind of a constructive criticism. You could have said, well, there's lots of private charities out there, and as government shrinks, they actually do get more plentiful as people's incomes go up. So, I mean, you could have talked about like private charities replacing, public welfare. He probably would have come up with his own snarky ass ways of trying to refute that. But on that route, yeah.
I did not specifically have the numbers on hand or in memory as to refute that. I mean, I did mention the Economist article that I had actually managed to glitch myself around the paywall to read. That was talking about third world nations and how the 20 years before the lockdowns kicked into full gear across the world, that they were basically raising themselves out of poverty, of where that some poor people were able to get themselves a little bit more well-off in society to help out their less well-off other poor people that weren't able to work and so forth. So I don't know. I thought that was a pretty good debate overall. I mean, I thought that I did a whole lot better on that stream than I did in my debate against Gabe is Gunk. If any of y'all had seen that debate, by the way.
No. You did pretty well. That was the only real criticism that I would have had for you. However, you could have jumped on Chud Logic at one point. You could literally have jumped on Chud Logic around that point because he said something along the lines of, before people worked the way they do now. And it's like, what are you, I was just sitting there just having to go at him in my head. Like, what?
That was a little bit of a funny line. I was just, that was a bit of an eyebrow raiser for me.
Yeah. It's like, no, work as it has been has always existed. I mean, you can even go back to like hunting and gathering clans. It's like it was even harder for them back then to work. And oh my gosh, I just saying I would have jumped all over him at that part. Oh my god.
So Zachary Colley says status before voting. Anyone but XYZ. Status after voting. Why is our country still getting worse? Me. Look in the mirror already. And I do want to say something that I kind of wanted to say a little bit earlier. Guilty as charged, by the way, because I did like the most reluctant vote that I ever did at this last go around for Trump. Ultimately, in 2016, any of y'all who have been a longtime listener of the channel know that I have voted for Evan McMullin. I was a never Trumper back in 2016. This go around, I was almost tempted to vote for Jo Jorgensen, but I just did not know if I agreed with her enough to do a protest vote. So ultimately, I did hold my nose and vote for Donald Trump. Myself. I'm one of those people who voted against Biden more than I voted for Trump. I kind of wish that either Cruz or Paul got the nomination in 2016, but maybe that's me still being maybe this whole election and my reaction to Trump plausibly losing is my bitterness of the 2016 Republican primary speaking. I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Honestly, I just saw me voted for Trump as a 4-year extinction to having to shoot our way out. But obviously, I didn't count for the cheating.
Well, if nothing else, I want everyone to remember this. Pay attention to the news media in the coming months as Harris takes the presidency. Will the Federal Reserve's policy of continuing to print money like mad, I guarantee you it ain't going to change one bit.
Pragmaticist, however you pronounce his name, says, joke time. What did the communists use before candles? Electricity.
Indeed. And as a number of people pointed out in my recent video debunking the Gravel Institute, a number of people made the joke how they were talking about under capitalism, it's either work or starve. Yes, and under communism, it's work and starve.
Yeah, that's another part of the debate that I had with Chud Logic yesterday, because a whole lot of it was on the principle of work or starve, and he was saying that because if you don't work to like get your life essentials so that you can prevent yourself from starving. Therefore, that's a form of coercion against you. Is either work or starve is a form of coercion. And I said, no. It's not like any employer is holding you at gunpoint to work for any particular business at all.
JC Armitage says, on the plus side, we can blame Biden or Harris for the inevitable economic collapse.
Oh, true.
You know what? Heck, very well, Trump may have saved, as far as the history books are concerned, Trump may have saved himself from that little dart.
Also, I do, on kind of a more supernatural side, I do want to make a prediction. This more than likely will not happen. I do want to make a prediction. That Joe Biden may get the presidency. However, he may die before he takes the presidency. And the way he may die is that they may actually find out that he's got a brain tumor. And I believe that if a candidate dies before they get into office, it throws the entire election into question or chaos or something like that. And they have to, and it has to go to court or something like that. And so, based on that, Trump might get it anyway, and it might cause a lot of chaos. Just on that end, it might cause a lot of chaos on that end.
That's odd. Wouldn't that just mean that the vice president-elect would get nominated to be the main president instead? Like Harris get inaugurated as president?
There is some kind of technicality. I might be wrong on this, but there is some kind of technicality that does throw the election into chaos. So the vice president is not guaranteed to actually get the position, I believe. But again, that may not happen. Honestly, I just read something, and I just read something on that, and it was just, if that does happen to Biden, don't be surprised. It's just that's kind of what I was kind of seeing, and the source was not very credible, so it might not happen. But I mean, if it does, then that could definitely be an avenue by which it does throw the election and the country into chaos.
I do just want to say that litigious society actually brings up a legitimate point. Obama managed to blame the economic problems during his presidency on Bush, so Biden and Harris will likely do the same with Trump. And that's kind of the thought that popped up in my mind when the point was brought up earlier.
Zio Gold says, anyone else here think that every time AOC opens her mouth, she proves that she is unfit for Congress? It's funny you should bring up AOC. Let's talk about quick before we end. AOC did tweet out she wants to log everybody who's tweeted anything in favor of Trump, just so that we know who the Trump supporters were when they try to delete it later.
I have no regrets for having her as a weekly hottie when the revolution begins.
She likes to... outside of the raw actual words that she speaks, she likes to come off as a bit of a wallflower, ditzy valley girl. Just everybody's like American Barbie doll sweetheart and whatnot. And yet you listen to her actual words. She is psychotically evil.
Yeah.
Especially with that tweet right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's night and day.
But let's be honest. The only reason I keep her around because she has a nice rack.
For those who don't know, Night Shift shared a photo. I can't speak to the veracity of the photo, but AOC was a picture of AOC was taken during a press conference where she was wearing a rather thin top. Solomon saw it and said he wants her as the next weekly hottie.
Hey,
no,
Solomon had 1,000 wives.
No judgment from here. You know that.
I don't want her horse teeth to end up in my 2 cents video.
No. That's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. It's like, she can be a weekly hottie as long as she's wearing a paper bag over her head.
Just going to say, Solomon can request it. I have no plans to make AOC a weekly hottie at this time.
Oh, no. That's not what I meant by weekly hottie.
Snubbed by the host, Solo.
That's not what I meant by weekly. I mean, like my own personal weekly hottie when the revolution begins. Oh, man.
Good Lord.
All right. Well, on that note, everybody have a good upcoming week. We know there's gonna be some crazy happenings in America in the upcoming months, and we'll be here to talk about it on the My 2 Cents Show. So, for all those of you who joined the stream, thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. Solomon, you signed up right before the stream and it got you in here. If anybody else is interested in taking part of these streams, just, go ahead and pledge on Patreon or Subscribestar. And as always, that is my 2 cents. You can take it for what it's worth.
Our 2